Welcome back to Secret Weapons, and today we're taking a look at The Atom by Brown Amplification. This has for a long time been one of, if not my favorite dual overdrive on the market. This is the Protein from Brown Amplification, and it is a 2-in-1 overdrive featuring a blue channel and a green channel, that blue channel being, for my money, the best blues breaker riff on the market in terms of like an even 3-knob, great balanced blues breaker. Simple, straightforward, articulate, clear. It's a great circuit. And on the other side, the green channel is going to be Brown's riff on a Nobels ODR1, which I often hear described as anywhere from Prototube Screamer all the way through Nashville Overdrive. Kind of a classic, slightly mid-focused overdrive, a little more compression, a little more gain, a little bit darker than that blue counterpart. And today we're here talking about The Atom. This is Brown's standalone version of that green channel, the slightly more mid-focused, darker and compressed side of the Protein made into a standalone pedal. It's interesting, the green channel on the Protein always struck me as kind of like the sleeper side of things. The blue channel just is so clear and immediately useful. It also, I think, plays better in a lot of the earlier direct rigs I was running. I always struggled to get that green channel to sit right when I was playing the Iridium or the ACS-1 and some of those other kind of proto-amp sims before I settled into what I'm currently using, being that Universal Audio Dream Ruby blending combination. But those things react much more like a real amp than any of the other amp modeling I have used up until now. And I find that this actually opens up really well in those versus some of those previous systems I was using. And being about 6 months into this new kind of iteration of amp sims that I'm using, this thing's release could not have been timed out better because I feel like I'm really finding a lot of new and interesting value adds from that green channel, from this standalone version of the pedal. Now, am I using this thing the way you are supposed to use an ODR1, kind of that classic Nashville session guy overdrive pedal? Probably not. I actually, for my money, don't think I've ever played a Nobels ODR1. I think this is the only kind of riff on that circuit I have any real experience with. I'm not sure what the kind of like expected use case for it is, but here's what I can tell you about my use cases for this thing. I like that at low gain settings, this thing still breaks up. I like that kind of like warm, dark thing that it does as a countermeasure or as a counterbalance to a lot of my other kind of like medium gain overdrives that you see me kind of like use a ton on this channel and in my writing. Things like the Brown Carbon or the Delmar from Bondi or the Sick-As. A lot of those pedals that I tend to gravitate towards are a little bit more focused on the sparkle, the chime, being able to do that kind of like low gain, clean boosty kind of thing. This is not going to be your chimey, low gain, clean boost. This is going to be something that kind of growls even at low gain settings. And I think there's a lot of value in that. And as you crank this thing, both volume and drive, and or one or the other, you get a lot of grit out of this thing. You get a lot of big, angry guitar out of this thing. A lot of harmonic content between your notes. It's really satisfying to use as a low gain, kind of gritty rhythm tone, or as like a balls to the wall, full force. It's really satisfying both as that low gain grit and that high gain chaos. I think that there's a lot of great balance in here. Having said that, because this is that kind of like ODR1 mid-focus thing, I do find that it gets pretty dark pretty quickly. The tone below about noon for the way that I run my amps gets a little too dark, a little too quickly. So for me, I find there's a pretty specific sweet spot between about noon and 3 where almost all the usable EQ tones are in this thing. And from there, you just kind of like fine tune based on your single coils or on your humbuckers to kind of get the clarity or the weight that you need from this drive. But for however limited that tone control is for me, I find that that drive knob has usable settings pretty much from 0 to 10. You can take this thing next to 0, push the level and get some great, like I said, some great low breakup focus, or you can take it to literally 10 and just have a blast kind of like ripping your amp apart. There's a lot of fun stuff to be done in this thing. So as we go into our sound samples, I want to break it up into two different sections. We're going to start things off by taking a look at my Bunting Melody Queen with a Telecaster bridge pickup and a gold foil neck pickup. The reason that we're going to use that as the main guitar for a lot of the sound sampling is because, like I said, this thing provides a lot of gravity and weight and kind of like low-mid focused breakup, which is a great way to take your single coils and really imbue them with a grander sense of weight than you would otherwise get out of some shreddier, thinner, brighter overdrives. So here's a quick shot at the overall pedal board. We have our Bondi 2026 compressor, our Benson Germanium boost, the Black Mass 1312 into the Brown Amplification Atom. From there we go to the Benson preamp, to our Timeline, Big Sky, and Flint in stereo, and then up to the Duophony, which is running a blend of the Ruby and Dream amplifiers from Universal Audio. We are then going out to Universal Audio's Luna DAW with a Neve 1073 preamp. And I'm pretty much leaving a plate reverb on the Flint on for this entire thing. We'll pop in and out with the Timeline, the Benson Germanium boost, and the Bondi 2026 compressor as necessary. And I'll let you know anytime we do that. Before we jump into the Atom, let's go ahead and give our clean tone with the Bunting a listen. Okay, all knobs at noon on the Atom. Let's give it a listen. Little volume boost right at the top there. So let's start things off with kind of like a low gain setting on the Atom for the single coils. I actually think one of the things that I find a lot of value in about that green channel from the Protein and here in the Atom is even with your drive set pretty low, you get some great weight to your signal, especially with single coils that could use a little bit of like added low mid presence and everything. This thing does a really good job of kind of low gain grit. A lot of pedals that you'll see me highlight on this channel or that will often make my boards tend to be Klon voiced or blues breaker voiced, like the Brown Carbon, in ways that kind of you can run as kind of sparkly drives. And so having something that will kind of counterbalance that with like some low gain weight is really, really useful. So let's give the Atom a listen using kind of a low gain, but still clearly adding some grit, adding some weight, and driving your amps a little bit harder. This thing kind of loses a little bit of its touch responsiveness in terms of controlling how much breakup you get as you really start to dime that drive control out. And so here at those low settings, I actually really love how much you can actually get from lightening up your pick attack. Like I was digging in on the first bit of that a little bit, but if you listen to kind of even just that really clean chord structures can become really, really kind of weighty in a very useful way with something like this. Really like light palm muting. And with a little bit more of that tone control, the neck pickup gets really pretty as well. And my instinct can very often be to dig in really hard when I jump up to that neck pickup with an overdrive. And this is one of those ones that kind of benefits from some restraint really, really well. So we've brought up our drive a little bit, brought down our level a bit just to kind of keep things consistent, and we've dialed back that tone just a little bit. And the reason for that is, again, I can tend to have a bad habit of trying to dig in really like way too hard when I'm starting to kind of push and overdrive a little bit harder. And you can get a little bit of fizziness out of a lot of drives, this included, if you kind of are being a little too heavy-handed with that right hand. But with a little bit of restraint, you can actually get some really great mellow mid-gain tones with that drive right below noon, where you get a good sense of the amount of clipping that you want, especially with single coils, in a way that really kind of brings out more of a otherwise pretty clean, quiet guitar. Bring up that tone a little bit for those neck pickup moments. This is actually, a great opportunity to kind of showcase something like the Benson boost in front of this, because this tone right here would be a really, really useful kind of always on sound. Honestly, you could probably bring that drive down a little bit even and kind of use this as, like I said, like if you're playing single coils, this is a good always on rhythm tone. And then hit it with a boost. So without actually diming our drive, we're moving up to kind of like a medium-high gain sound with a fair bit more treble on that tone control. And the reason for that is I'm going to bring in the Bondi 2026 compressor with a moderate ratio and a really fast attack and release for kind of like a really compressed, articulate, funky thing. And then to kind of show how you can take a compressor tone that would almost shrink your guitar a little bit in service of very specific dynamics, and then bring it back to kind of a big full sound with the mid-range content of something like the Atom. So dry guitar. With that compressor. And now the compressor, super aggressive, like I said, into the Atom. And that's a great combination, because even if you want to get away from that more like throwbacky, plinky 1975 kind of thing, you can actually throw in a delay and get like some really great high sustain leads out of something like this. Extend out the release on that compressor, give it a little bit more of a ratio, but bring up a little bit more of that volume from the compressor so we're hitting the Atom just a hair harder. Thing I really love in an overdrive is being able to dime out that drive control and still feel like it remains either balanced or honestly kind of hits a sweet spot. There's something very satisfying about turning something all the way up and having it just rock. And this thing really does kind of almost bloom out when you really hit it hard. So we've got that drive at max now. We've got that tone up just a little bit. We're avoiding the fizziness, but we'll kind of play with the tone in this setting so you can kind of hear how important it is to sweet spot your tone control on this thing to avoid fizziness or kind of like a woolly muffledness that a lot of mid-focus overdrives can be susceptible to if you're not careful. But let's give the full speed on the Atom a listen. Okay, and so you can darken that and kind of add a little bit more weight to that by bringing that tone control down. And like I said, if you're not careful, there's a great weight to that. Like I said, you got to be a little bit careful with that tone control. would say, in my opinion, all of the best sound exists basically between noon and 3. So pretty much anywhere in there, you're kind of dialing between some really excellent sweet spots. So now that we've run through those single coil tones, let's now jump over to my Jennings Voyager with McNelly Chaplin humbuckers. This is a surprisingly bright and articulate set of humbuckers, but they are still humbuckers. And so you will find that we have to kind of compensate a little bit more aggressively with that tone control. But so I want to run through that, hear kind of how the tone control impacts humbuckers separately or differently than it impacts single coils. And then we'll listen to some of those same gain structures that we explored in this last section to kind of see how much more you can get out of your humbuckers in this situation. So this section is mostly going to highlight how the tone and drive controls react differently to higher output humbuckers than they do to my single coils. So I'm not going to really talk a lot during this part because I don't think I need to, because we covered a lot of what we're doing with the Atom in the last section. So we'll kind of mostly hang back and just listen to some sound samples. So first things first, let's start things back up with that low gain setting. That compressor for that same kind of funkier thing. So yeah, I think that'll do it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this to be useful or enlightening in some way. If you dig this sound, I highly recommend that you check this thing out or check out the Protein. Again, it's one of the best 2-in-1s on the market. And if you're only in the market for that kind of like green channel, more compressed focus thing, this is a phenomenal option. I highly recommend you check it out. So until next time, thanks for watching.